For a moment, forget everything you've been told about aging. Don't think about wrinkles forming on your skin or gray hair appearing, or even about people saying things like, "It's just your age." Instead, try to think of something much, much smaller, something on a scale so tiny that you can't even see it with your eyes, but that will nevertheless likely determine how quickly you age on the inside. In 2009, a renowned scientist named Elizabeth Blackburn was awarded the prestigious Nobel Prize for discovering a mechanism that is literally capable of slowing down or speeding up your cellular aging. I'm not talking about a cream, and I'm not talking about a pill. I'm talking about something that's hidden at the very end of your DNA. And the discovery was so profound, it shook the entire field of biology, because it proved that aging isn't a one-way street. It's a dynamic process that you can actually influence. And the most stunning and truly remarkable part of all is that this fascinating and intricate mechanism is actually deeply and fundamentally connected to something that no one would have ever even imagined or expected: your mental health. And now, with that information in mind, let's take a quick and fascinating trip around the world. While laboratories and research centers search for the elusive secret to eternal youth, there are entire populations scattered across the globe: Sardinia, Okinawa, Nicoya, and, well, several others, who manage to live much longer and better lives. And they know nothing about scientific research, advanced biology, complex neurology, or even Nobel Prizes. Many people in these places live to be over 100 years old, surrounded by their families with great mental clarity and with joy. And so the question is inevitable: what do they know that we don't? And what science discovered is that, without even realizing it, these people are protecting a biological mechanism that we all have. But it's one that very few of us know we have, and even fewer of us take care of. That mechanism is the clock that sets the speed at which you age. To understand this, let me give you an example. Imagine, or just remember, the plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces. And think about it: if those tips at the end of the laces disappear, the lace frays. Well, the exact same thing happens with your cells. At the end of each chromosome, there's a small protective cap. And that protective cap is called a telomere. Its mission is very simple: to protect your DNA. And to do so every time the cell divides. And keep in mind, dividing is one of a cell's fundamental functions, and moreover, its ability to do so is essential for life and for the survival of the organism. But that protection for the DNA, the telomere, gets a little bit shorter every time the cell divides. At first nothing happens, because the telomeres are long. But a moment eventually comes, after dozens of cell divisions, when that protective cap at the end of the chromosome, known as the telomere, becomes so worn down and frayed that the cell is forced to activate a kind of internal alarm system. This internal alarm signals, "I can't keep dividing, I have reached my limit, I'm retiring." This permanent withdrawal from the cell cycle is what scientists refer to as cellular senescence, a state in which the cell remains alive but can no longer divide or replicate. This is what we call cellular aging, and here you can see it in action. Well, for many years, scientists and researchers in the field of biology believed that this process was completely inevitable, something that simply could not be avoided: to be born, to divide, to gradually shorten, to eventually retire, and then the end. But then, something remarkable happened, until the pioneering scientist Elizabeth Blackburn came along and made a groundbreaking discovery, revealing that that's not actually the whole story after all. she discovered that there is a silent and discreet enzyme that was almost forgotten, but that has an extraordinary power. That enzyme is called telomerase. Telomerase. And its function is so amazing it might seem like science fiction. It repairs and lengthens the telomeres. In other words, if the telomere is the tip of the shoelace, telomerase is the artisan that rebuilds it. And this discovery was revolutionary. It showed that aging is not just wear and tear, that it's a balance between wear and repair. And from the results of this research, obviously a question arose, one that you're probably asking yourself as well. If we all have telomerase, why do we age? The answer was baffling. In most human cells, telomerase is almost turned off. It only activates in very specific situations. And this is a safety system to prevent cells from dividing uncontrollably. Part of that is cancer. Surprising. But what came next was even more surprising. The studies by Blackburn and also by the psychologist Elisa Epel revealed something unexpected. The factor, pay attention, the factor that most accelerates the shortening of telomeres is not time, the passing of the years, it is stress. But not the momentary stress of a single event, but chronic stress. In other words, that worry you have that never rests, sustained loneliness, the prolonged care of a family member, that's something that also generates stress, pessimism, the feeling of being under constant threat. That stress generates inflammation and it generates cortisol in a sustained way. It's like an invisible acid that melts your telomeres from the inside. And what's worse, it inhibits telomerase. Therefore, what it does is prevent the repair of the telomere. For the first time, science showed that our thoughts and our emotions can reach, and indeed do reach, the very nucleus of our cells. I imagine you're asking yourself the same question I asked myself when I found this out. If the mind can accelerate aging, can it also slow it down? One of the answers can be found thousands of kilometers away in those blue zones, in those cities I mentioned before. And they are called that blue zones because they are unintentionally a perfect experiment in longevity. They are places where people live longer, but above all, they are places where people live better. And what's fascinating is that the people who live there haven't designed their lives thinking about telomeres or telomerase. They have simply created and fostered cultures where truly chronic stress has almost no room. There are three fundamental pillars that largely explain the underlying reasons that drive longevity in these remarkable cities. The first of these pillars is that the people living there strive to have a clear and meaningful mission, a strong sense of purpose for living each and every day. And they call that Ikigai, which translates to a life plan. They know why they get up, they know what they're going to do each day, and they have a reason, or call it a purpose for doing it, which serves as a natural buffer against stress. It protects their immune system and it protects their telomeres. Second, they live their lives focused around a supportive community. They call that Moai, which translates as extended family. Loneliness is one of the most toxic stress generators that exist. Feeling alone generates much more stress than you think. And in Okinawa, for example, stress is practically non-existent among its citizens. In Sardinia, something similar happens. Older people are not considered burdens. They are a central part of family life. And this, without a doubt, reduces inflammation, anxiety, and sadness in people. And therefore, it reduces cellular wear. Third, they have rituals of deceleration. In Sardinia, they call it happy hour. In Loma Linda, California, they call it the 24-hour Sabbath of the Adventists. There are other frequently practiced rituals in these communities, such as daily walks, for example. But not only that, they have a whole set of different simple and unique gestures that gently lead them to reduce the number of revolutions in the engines of their lives, helping them slow down. While we are constantly living our lives, always putting out emotional fires and infernos, they live in a way where the fire almost never even begins to ignite. And this is exactly where the important research of Blackburn, as well as Lumera, who is another distinguished researcher that I will talk about later, IPEL, and a whole modern scientific community that is dedicated to studying stress and longevity all come together and converge. The protection of the telomere is an important process that truly begins in the mind, in how you interpret what's happening to you, in how you talk to yourself, in how you experience your connections with the life that surrounds you and with those who surround you. Alright, so after all this information I've just given you, now is the time to introduce you to the tool. The one you need to keep in mind because it is the most powerful one, and when you're most seriously considering the question of a good, healthy, and long life, you have to use it. What is that tool? It's going to surprise you. I'm sure of it. It's your internal dialogue, what you communicate to yourself, how you interpret a challenge to yourself, how you manage a conflict, how you talk to yourself in a difficult moment. Each one of these different reactions modifies your body's chemistry in a matter of seconds, whether you believe it or not. Seconds. And what I'm telling you isn't poetry, it's pure and simple biology. That internal narrative, what you say and how you say it, determines whether your brain releases cortisol or calm. Whether your immune system goes on the defensive or into repair. Whether your telomeres wear down or simply get a break. Look, as an example, think about two phrases that are very simple. You can tell yourself, this is a disaster. Or tell yourself, no, this is a difficult moment. Let's breathe and take the next step. The first phrase activates inflammation. The second, however, activates regulation. The first shortens telomeres and the second protects them. That is precisely why the blue zones are truly no mystery at all. They serve as the living, undeniable proof of something that is absolutely essential to our lives. Aging in its essence is a continuous and ongoing conversation between your mind and your cells, a dialogue that never truly ends. Finding a clear purpose in every moment of life, having a support network, using customs that help you slow down, and with that rhythm, also quiet the noise we all carry. Listening to an inner voice that doesn't punish you, but that accompanies you. All of that, and not lists of ingredients for your meals or going to the supermarket to get it all, that what I've just told you is what truly affects your longevity. That is exactly why you do not actually need to move or relocate yourself to Okinawa, to Sardinia, to Ikaria, or to Nicoya. What you truly need is to gradually change the way you live your life, starting with your own mind and your daily habits. Now that we're here together right now, and as I pointed out just a moment ago, I really have to tell you something important. Telomeres is not a switch that you turn on or off with a diet or with a pill, nor with a magical superfood. If you were waiting for me to give you a quick and easy recipe, something you could just whip up in a few minutes, you won't find it here or with me. And this, although it may seem a bit strange or even unexpected at first, is actually wonderful, truly wonderful news for you. What really protects your telomeres isn't in a store or on a shopping list. The secret is truly in how you live deeply on the inside. What science discovered, what Blackburn carefully observed, what Elissa Apel carefully observed, what long-lived meditators consistently demonstrate, and those who live in the remarkable blue zones is something much more profound. Your biology repairs itself. And it does so, in fact, when you actually repair yourself, truly, in your own way. Telomerase responds to a very particular internal climate. A climate without emotional fires, without open wars against yourself, without holding on to resentment, and without carrying any hidden grudges or bitterness. All of that consumes your vital energy. And discovering this information forces us to focus on what's essential, on the only thing that truly matters, which is also what best protects your telomeres. And for that, I'm going to offer you a helpful series of tips or ideas so that you can help yourself. First, learn to forgive. Forgiveness is, simply put, nothing more than learning to separate yourself from your past, from those things that affect you negatively. There is truly nothing that makes you feel older than a sustained resentment. It's not just your soul that ages. Literally, it's your cells that age faster. Resentment is cortisol seeping over and over again into your blood, and that is like poison, because that is inflammation. Chronic, and it's also your body believing that the threat is still alive, when in reality it happened a long time ago. Forgiveness, and this is something I can tell you from personal experience, is not a spiritual act. Undoubtedly, a spiritual attitude helps you to forgive, but in reality, it is a biological act. It's telling your nervous system, we are no longer in danger. And when that happens, your body gradually shifts from being on defense to being in a state of repair. And it is right there, at that very moment, when telomerase can finally begin to work. You don't have to reconcile with anyone, nor do you have to justify what happened. You just have to say that you are not going to pay attention, you are not going to pay today for a harm that occurred yesterday. And that internal, silent, intimate act is in reality a direct balm for your DNA. Second, you must learn to be truly compassionate, which is nothing more than also learning to gently disconnect from your own self-criticism. You have to disconnect from self-criticism. The voice that most destroys your telomeres isn't the voice of the outside world, of what people say, of what they think of you. It is your own voice. It's that harsh phrase, that relentless demand you place on yourself, that I should have done better. Your body actually perceives all of that as a threat. Compassion, first for yourself and then, of course, for others, gently does exactly the opposite. It turns off the alarm. When you practice compassion, your body releases oxytocin, which is a hormone that reduces stress. It calms your immune system and creates an internal climate of security. In other words, an internal climate of security and safety within your mind implies cellular repair. It also means you'll be activating telomerase. And what I'm telling you right now isn't just metaphorical, it's not merely a figure of speech. This is actually backed by scientific studies and research that confirm the reasons why people who live in the blue zones are consistently surrounded by strong support networks, genuine friendships, and close-knit tribes that truly make them feel like family. The compassion and kindness they share with each other acts as a true biological shield. And this same principle can apply to you as well. Of course it can. In fact, you'll see, it's actually quite simple. In fact, you can start with the easiest thing. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. Now let's move on to the third piece of advice. You must learn the movement that brings you peace and quiets the noise. But not the kind of movement that burns fat, the kind you do at the gym. I'm not suggesting you go to the gym, and I'm not thinking of telling you to get in shape either. No. I'm talking about something much more primitive and profound and simple at the same time. Walking, breathing, and moving your body without any major strain. Finding a rhythm that simply brings you back to the present, to the here and now. In other words, a movement that truly helps you to calm yourself from within. And in all of this, there is actually a clear biological reason why movement in nature is so remarkably powerful. You see, neuroscientists from the University of Exeter demonstrated, for example, that living close to the ocean, the sea, or even simply spending time looking at the sea, calmly observing the water, helps to calm the amygdala. And the amygdala is your body center for fear and anxiety. The simple rhythm of the waves and contemplating the vastness of the water and the ocean gives your brain the command for peace. And at the same time, they significantly and noticeably reduce the production of cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone. Gentle movements reduce cortisol in a way that science has been observing for decades. Two of the most notable and well-known blue zones, Okinawa and Sardinia, are islands, or if you prefer, coastal areas. The Exeter study provides the scientific proof of why the environment of these populations, that is the sea, is a direct protective factor against stress, which is, don't forget, the number one enemy of telomeres. There are other various moderate movements in blue zones, such as those related to gardening, climbing a hill, or walking to the market. Each of these are basically physiological switches. When the body moves in a gentle and natural way, the brain's interpretation is, we are safe, we are alive, therefore we can repair. So the important thing at this point is not, as I was saying, to exercise or go to the gym, no. The point is that you can learn to maintain an open yet silent conversation with your biology. You must learn to take conscious and intentional pauses. I'm talking about brief breaks of about 10 seconds, or even a minute that can help you change your day, your morning, or your afternoon. Blackburn and Apple showed something that is actually beautiful. The way you breathe and the rhythm with which you speak to yourself alter your physiology in a matter of seconds. You don't need an hour of meditation, and you don't need to go to a monastery for a weekend either. All you need are just a few precious seconds, just a few seconds in which you can do 4 very simple, straightforward things. Exhale slowly and deeply. Acknowledge and recognize what you're feeling in this moment. Remind yourself this is temporary right now. And fourth, carefully ask yourself, what is my next step? You see, that micropause changes the tone of your nervous system. It lowers the internal pressure and opens up a space for the telomeres to breathe. It's just a few seconds, and your biology begins to come out of the war. Fifth piece of advice. You must learn to have an internal dialogue as if you were an entire ecosystem. In other words, it's about activating a truly authentic and personal mental telomerase. It all comes down to the story you tell yourself. You see, you can't completely eliminate stress, but you can absolutely give it meaning. You can truly rewrite the script so that your body doesn't really experience your life as a threat, but instead as a path. Your internal dialogue, which consists of your thoughts and feelings, is the emotional environment in which your cells live. If that climate is a desert, the telomeres burn out. If that climate, however, is a safe place, the telomeres repair themselves. It's not merely about being positive, it's truly about being conscious and aware. It's about intentionally choosing a phrase that genuinely gives you back a sense of control. And that choice, made over and over again, that is the true activator of your longevity. After everything I've told you, and to recap and summarize just a little bit, 2 questions come to mind. And of course, each one has its own answer. The first question is, what is the main lesson from the blue zones, known for healthy living and longevity? It's very simple. They aren't just a place where some people live longer. No. They are scientific strategies for reducing cortisol. And the second is, what's the ultimate truth behind that Nobel Prize, awarded for studies that link the mind and longevity? What is it? It's very simple. Telomerase is not a miracle, it's just a reflection. It reflects the internal climate you live in, and it reflects your level of stress, your connections, the level of commitment you have to your own life plan, your ability to let go, the way you talk to yourself, the way you naturally move through the world, and the way you move around. And the final lesson is that we can't extend life like stretching a piece of gum. Ultimately, our date of death is probably already written, but what we can do is improve it. That's what longevity is about. Making it more pleasant, more in line with what our body needs and what we long for to be in good health. Longevity is not a number, it's a style of relating to yourself. So, there's just one last question. Forgive me for so many questions, but I find all of this very interesting. What is the question? What small decision can you make right now that will improve your biological functioning? The first thing I'll tell you is, don't look for perfection. Just focus on heading in the right direction. You already know your body is listening. Be grateful for every gesture and make it known. Communicate it to your body. A pause, learning to forgive, a few unhurried steps. Even say a kind phrase to yourself. These small decisions lay a solid foundation for a happy, long life. Treat yourself well. If you don't, your body will defend itself with a truly military strategy and trigger inflammation. That's something you don't want to happen, because when inflammation begins, the rest of the problems follow. And to help you answer that last question, what your small decisions could be, I'll delve deeper into that in the next video. It's something that will help you because it will surprise you. Science has found the biological extinguisher for that chronic fire, which is inflammation, what the body uses to defend itself. And to your surprise, you won't expect this. To your surprise, that way of putting out the inflammation is the practice of human values. In the second video of this 4-part series, you'll discover how gratitude, forgiveness, your inner dialogue, something I've hinted at in this video, literally become your own anti-inflammatory pharmacy. You'll be able to program your mind and make it immune to wear and tear. I hope you like it. I'll read your comments. And don't forget, forward, always forward.